Breaking news on Newsday TV. Police are updating us on an apparent murder-suicide that left 5 people dead in Syosset. Let's listen in.
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Scott Skronecki. I am the commanding officer of the Public Information Office at the Nassau County Police Department. We are here today to discuss the details of a homicide that occurred yesterday in Syosset. With us today is the Police Commissioner, Patrick Ryder, the First Deputy Commissioner, Kevin Smith, the Chief of Department, Stephen Palmer, the Chief of Detectives, Christopher Ferro, and the Commanding Officer of the Homicide Squad, Detective Captain Stephen Fitzpatrick. Commissioner Ryder.
So I'm going to be very brief, and then I'm going to turn it over to Captain Fitzpatrick to go over the details. 41 years, that is probably one of the most horrific scenes I've ever seen. Walking into that back room of that house where these 4 victims lie after being shot multiple times. And also the individual, the shooter, being on the front lawn also committed suicide. I contacted the county executive immediately, gave him the update, and his concern for the family, of course, was first. And then, of course, asking about our officers. Are they okay? Last night, our officers sat and met with our peer support group to make sure that they can handle what they just went through. Officers go through this every single day of their life, and they take it home to their families. And we have to make sure that their care is being taken care of. The second thing that I think is very important. As a community, we hear things. We know things, we see things. And if we don't say something, sometimes the outcomes are like we get yesterday. There was talk in that community about the distress of this shooter that had decided he did not want to leave his residence after his mom died. There was talk in the community in the past that if you hear shots fired, don't call the police. It'll be too late. These are things that are disturbing to us in law enforcement, that we open up so many avenues to come to us for help. Call 911, call the local precinct, or come down and visit us and talk to us. We will keep it anonymous. But there are laws that are put in place to make sure individuals that are suffering through some mental health issues or current stress, that we can remove weapons, like the red flag law. They're in place for a reason. And we're asking our communities to not sit back. Be our eyes, be our ears in those communities, and let us know what is going on. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Detective Captain Steve Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Commissioner. As the Commissioner said, yesterday we're updating you about the fatal Syosset horrific shooting. So yesterday at approximately 11:58 hours, 911 received a phone call for shots fired. A male shot himself on the front lawn. That address is 76 Wyoming Court in Syosset. That subject has been identified as Joseph DeLucia, D-E-L-U-C-I-A. He's a junior. He was 59 years of age. He was born 4/12/1965 and lived at that address. Officers found him with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his chest. He was pronounced at the scene. Officers then went into the house to clear the house and make sure if anybody else was injured. Inside, as the Commissioner said, in the rear den area, 4 individuals were found with multiple gunshot wounds that were expired. Those victims have now been identified as the siblings and niece of the subject, Joseph. They are Joanne Kearns, K-E-A-R-N-S. She's 69 years old. She lived in Tampa, Florida. Frank DeLucia, D-E-L-U-C-I-A, 64 years old. He was from Durham, North Carolina. Tina Hammond, H-A-M-N-O-N-D, 64, from East Patchogue. And her daughter, Victoria Hammond, 30 years old, also from East Patchogue. When officers arrived and found those victims, they immediately called EMS. EMS came, pronounced those individuals at scene. All of these siblings were the children of Joseph DeLucia Sr. and Teresa DeLucia. Teresa passed away on August 19th of this year, and her funeral was the 23rd. 3 days later, this incident occurred. As well as many of you have already reported, the perception of Joseph Jr. was that he was being cut out of the will and was going to be displaced without a place to go. He did have past mental issues, psychological issues that were reported to us that we still have not confirmed. Because of that perception, he decided that day to get a loaded Mossberg shotgun, 12 gauge, approached them in the rear area of the house, and from the kitchen fired 12 shots, striking all 4 of them multiple times. He then took the weapon, went out onto the front lawn, was shouting indiscriminately about what had happened. A neighbor heard him doing this, called 911, and that was our 911 caller. He then self-inflicted shot to the chest and killed himself. As the commissioner said, if anybody has somebody that they think has issues, they should be calling us. We're not saying this incident could have been averted, but maybe it could have. This is the weapon he used. It's a pump-action shotgun. It was recovered at the scene. It has no alterations to make it illegal. This is a legal possessed shotgun. But if he was reported to be mentally unstable, this may be illegal for him to possess. Does that make sense? Okay. When this happened, they arrived to meet the realtor, as you all are aware of. They brought Starbucks. They were assembled in the den area. The brother had stayed behind. There were 13 overall shots, 12 to the victims, 1 to the subject. There's only 1 prior call to this house for a well check of him. That person had called in 2022. He was not displaying any signs of anything that we would take action to take him against his will, that he was dangerous to himself or others at that time. But that is the only call. He has only 1 prior arrest for a DW impaired. That was 1983, and that's all we have on him. Anybody have any questions?
Commissioner, you said something about if you hear gunshots, don't call police, it will be too late. Can you just explain that?
So, unconfirmed, but neighbors have reported that he has made statements in the past that if you hear gunshots, don't bother calling 911, it's going to be too late.
Oh, like who's going to be suicide?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can you give us an background on the 59-year-old?
On the subject?
Yes.
So he was an auto mechanic. He worked for a local car dealership. He was kind of a hoarder, spent all his money on his tools and stuff. The house is pretty much hoarded, packed with tools and stuff involved in motor mechanics. He was living there his entire life, never lived on his own. So you can see the mindset where his world was now changing at 59 years old, and he was panicking.
Are there any surviving family members, or did he kill all the siblings?
There are surviving members, sons of the sisters and such.
Have they spoken to police?
We have spoken to them. Apparently, they were notified prior to us by members of the news media. We would ask if you please check with us before contacting family members in such a horrific incident. But we have spoken to all family members at this point.
And
Sir.
those were all the siblings, I'm sorry, all the siblings were killed in the family. There was no surviving.
The entire
siblings.
family is now gone.
You mentioned the weapon was a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, kind of a low, it doesn't have a high capacity, it's like 3 or 5 shots, right?
Mhm.
So you said there were 13 shots.
Correct.
So he had time to reload multiple times and stalk
If
you?
you notice on the side, it has a holder to hold extra
Carrier,
rounds
yeah.
on it, an extra carrier. I don't know whatever he had in his pockets at the time as well. But once he's shot each person at least 1 time, then you can reload and reshoot.
Did he have a gun permit?
No. He has no handgun permit.
And your advice for people, I mean, you had mentioned if you see something, say something. If people have concerns, they should call police. But there was that wellness check somebody did call in 2022. It seemed like that was too early. And when they made the phone call, when the incident happened, that may have been too late. So what advice, what should people know? When can they?
You call any time.
police?
We'll come every time and investigate. As the commissioner said, there was rumors in the neighborhood of him making statements. Make us aware of that. We keep track on everybody in the community. We know the community. So if I know Joseph and I know Joseph's having issues, I'll start initiating some process of a red flag law and get that shotgun away from him. But this didn't happen in this case. So some people are afraid to call 911. What are we going to do? We can, let us look into it. We're not, we're here to help. So.
You had mentioned some of the statements that were made were kind of like heads up, this is a situation that needs police attention. What exactly were those? Like, I'm going to kill him if they try to, I'm not leaving, do you have any examples of exactly
Commissioner.
what you said?
So all those statements, as I said, are unconfirmed, right? But we do know what multiple neighbors have said. Don't become a victim. Speak up. This is 2024. We will protect you. We will protect your identity. But if you're not going to come and help us, let us help you. Tell us what you hear. Tell us what you see. And don't become the victim, and we will protect you.
Just a quick question. I think, Captain, you had said there was the perception that he was being cut out of the will. Do we know, was he being cut out of the will?
According to surviving relatives, that's not accurate.
He
He was
wasn't-
being taken care of,
He was being taken care of.
but he would have to
died,
relocate.
And he didn't want to relocate because that was where. And
Okay.
you said the gun was legally registered to whom?
We're still looking into the serial number and where it might have been purchased.
Thank you, everyone. We'll have a press release going out that has the names in writing shortly after this press conference. Thank you very much.
Nassau police just wrapping up the press conference of an apparent murder-suicide that left 5 people dead in Syosset, identifying the shooter as Joseph Delouche, at 59 years old. They also said that he fired 12 shots using a shotgun at his siblings and niece. They identify as Joanne Kearns, Frank Delouche, Tina Hammond, and Victoria Hammond, who is his niece, the last person. This happened 3 days after his mother's funeral, Teresa Delouche. We'll have more on this press conference, and if you missed anything, we'll have it on our website. Just go to our website, newsday.com, click Get More below the Newsday TV video box.